Psychological measurements in sports and exercise. Objectives: define and identify the scope of the field of sports psychology as well as the domains involved. Discuss ethics and cautions in the use of psychological testing with athletes, and describe the qualifications necessary for using and interpreting psychological tests and the feedback process involved in psychological testing of athletes. Discuss the use and abuse of psychological tests for team selection and identify factors related to reliability and validity of psychological inventories and differentiate between the research and application perspectives. Sports psychology. The mind affects the body. Therefore, the way we think and feel has a strong impact on how we physically perform. Positive and negative psychological factors are associated with sport participation, and sport and exercise psychologists attempt to accentuate the positive aspects of participation. There's two main areas in sports psychology: performance enhancements, which affects the psychological factors on sports performance, anxiety, concentration, confidence, and motivation, and mental health. Participation in sport, exercise, and physical activity has a capacity to increase feelings of psychological well-being. The trait versus state measures. Trait, fundamental aspects of personality, general source of variability, resides with the person, minimizing the role of situational factors. State, function of a particular situation or environment. When the situation changes, so does the psychological state. General versus sport-specific measures. Psychologists found that situation-specific measures provide more accurate and reliable results. Example, people who aren't normally anxious may become anxious when taking a test. And multidimensional and sport-specific measures may help researchers better understand and measure states and traits in sports. Cautions. Understanding of test principles and the concepts of measurement error, ability to evaluate a test validity and its purpose for use, self-awareness of one's own qualifications and limitations, and inappropriate test use. In administering feedback to participants about the results and interpretation of the tests, and to help reduce bias, a coach should not be involved in the testing procedure. The quantitative versus qualitative measurement. Quantitative is numerical in nature in Likert scales, semantic differential scales, and the qualitative is textual in nature, a sense of a phenomena. Interviews, field observations are included in that. Quantitative methods are Likert scales, an interval-based scale 1 to 5 that assumes equal distance between responses and used to assess the degree of or disagreement with statements. The semantic differential scales is similar to Likert scale but uses pair of adjectives to oppose with opposite meanings, like good to bad, weak to strong. Semantic differential scales for measuring attitudes towards physical activity. So you start with good to bad, pleasant to unpleasant, and then you rate it in between. Qualitative methods. Interviews, most common source of data in qualitative research, range from a highly structured to open-ended style, and a tape recorder note-taking. Observations, second most common data source, direct observation with note-taking and videotaping. Psychological skills. 90% of U.S. and Canadian athletes use some form of mental training and preparation for their events. Psychological skills, 5 most common: imagery, self-talk, concentration, goal setting, and confidence. Imagery, also known as visualization, mental rehearsal, mental practice, shown to improve performance, increase neurological activation, and differentiate high-performing from lower-performing athletes. The Vividness of Movement Imagery Questionnaire 2 represents this. Self-talk refers to the practice of self-talk strategies. Negative self-talk often results in declines in mood and performance. Positive self-talk can enhance confidence, focus performance, and psychological health. Automatic self-talk questionnaire for sports was developed by Zerbanus et al. In 2009. Concentration. General measure of concentration is a test of attentional and interpersonal style, but it receives criticism in sports settings. Multiple adaptations have been made for specific scenarios, with the first used in tennis. Baseball tests of attentional and interpersonal style. Goal setting can enhance performance and enjoyment, increase participation and interest, and help maintain direction and persistent effort. No specific scales, however, a variety of strategies have been developed. Task and Ego Orientation in Sport Questionnaire, Chi and Duda, 1995. And confidence. Arguably the most important psychological factor in sports, predictive of superior performance essential component of mental toughness, and trait and state sport confidence inventories were developed by Bailey in 1986. Scales used in exercise psychology. Exercise psychology is primarily concerned with studying the psychological and emotional effects of exercise. Commonly used scales is exercise motivational inventory and behavioral regulation and exercise questionnaire 2. Stages of change for exercise and physical activity, designed to measure the specific stage of exercise that participants might be in at a particular time. There are 5 stages, and they're used to develop specific interventions for people based upon where they are stuck regarding lifestyle changes. And here's your readiness to change flowchart. You can look that over a second. General psychology scales used in sport and exercise. Self-motivation inventory, profile of mood states, and tests of attentional, interpersonal, and style. Additional subscales of the test of attentional and interpersonal style. Here's broad external, external overload, broad internal, internal overload, narrow focus, and reduced focus. In summary, sport and exercise psychology is a multidisciplinary field that has been rapidly evolving over the last 20 years. A number of scales and tools have been developed to help measure these traits and states, and several scales have been developed to reflect the multidimensional nature of sport and exercise psychology.